Golden days in the sunshine of our happy youth. Golden days full of gaiety and full of truth. In our hearts we remember them all else above. Golden days, days of youth and love. How we laughed with a joy that only love can bring. Looking back through memory's haze, we will know life has nothing sweeter than its springtime. Golden days when we're young. Golden days.
Now let us discuss substance, which is an arrangement of matter, taking various forms in the appearance world, and beheld by men without always understanding how spirit is behind it. Matter then becoming always a veil to cloak spirit. When you think of the manifestations of nature, the little berries, the roots, the leaves, the branches of foliage, do you find that these creations are apart from your own living bodies? Nay, I tell you, the rocks, the minerals, the trees, all the elements are blended together into one montage, and humanity, from an outer standpoint, is included in the creation of matter. Will you envision, then, that behind the veil of the appearances there are the manifestations of spirit itself and the intent of spirit to crown humanity with the victorious crown of self-mastery? Are these things being done in the realm of nature? Nay, I tell you, for man is set apart from nature, and man is supreme, made a little lower than the angels, yet crowned with more glory than they. To man is given the opportunity to develop self-mastery and thus dominion over the entire earth. But for what purpose? Pray tell me. If not for the purposes of progressive attainment in that measure of a man whereby man can be a manifestation of God in action. If God then acts through man, does he not produce the completeness of perfection? And if perfection takes dominion over the whole earth, will not the natural elements, those tiny growing creatures, both great and small, manifest the shining evoked by dominant humanity over outer form? For spirit then becomes glorified in matter, as matter fulfills that for which it originally came forth into manifestation. Let all understand that darkness is not real, that evil is not real, that pain is not real, that these manifestations, including unhappiness, come to man to evoke that spiritual response that will restore him to the path of his own overcoming victory. And what a marvelous outpicturing of beauty and perfection can come forth through the veil of flesh, when the veil is completely crowned with understanding. Without understanding, what is expected and what manifests? With understanding, light and strength and purity and victory and joy become the cornucopia of a massive outpouring of cosmic grace unto the whole world. Understanding is the key, and therefore the mind of man should become the mind of Christ. The mind of man should become imbued with those masterful rates of vibration, whereby he understands that simply because in his physical realm there appears some unwanted or unwarranted condition, does not mean that this is the result of the higher power's action, but rather the fact that individuals become giant ears and giant eyes, taking in the whole spectrum of their outer environment and recording them deeply within the realm of the subconscious mind. Here from that latent realm, as a computer pours forth the output of its own input, comes forth those darkening domains of consciousness which are not to individuals' liking. And when do they choose to come forth? Many times directly at those moments when individuals are trying to create that roseate picture of immortality that is the grace of God appearing within man. It is as though Mephistopheles were appearing at the same time with Christ upon the mount, and that old drama of the temptation is being reenacted all over again. Without struggle, humanity can scarce expect that overcoming victory will be theirs. For the environmental paintings that are manifest upon this planetary body are of two kinds, unsavory and savory, and the gamut in between is often not clearly delineated. For there are vibratory rates of manifestation that act as an overlay or patine in the world of outer art, and surrealist dimensions are often undesirable, for they embody fourth-dimensional aborted concepts that in themselves cannot give to humanity a rate of vibration that is uplifting, simply because in the moment of their creation they were already imprinted with those undesirable qualities which are the rate of vibration which they contain and hold. Will all then see with me that the content of men's minds must be guarded, and that which they behold must be guarded, that it does not make that deep imprint on the psyche and being of man, which otherwise, without being guarded, it will make. And when it makes a very deep etching upon the consciousness, the smoothing away of that record is not as easy. An individual should understand that more violet fire is required, that more application to the heart of God is required, and that more walking in righteousness is required simply to overbalance that unwanted condition. Do you see how man should guard the gateway to his consciousness? How he should reckon always with the law of life, the law of his inner being, not always standing in the portals of revelation, ready to spew forth their righteous knowledge immediately, but sometimes holding those aspects of the great cosmic law momentarily from acting in order to allow man to reach some other plateau of accomplishment before once again the karmic law exacts its tribute and man is judged from the cosmic level. Let me make clear then that all things are justly administered in the cosmos. But all things are not justly administered here in the world of form. For here, where individuals have free will, they will often exercise it directly to thwart the very desirable conditions that others want, the very desires that others themselves have become barriers to the happiness of these individuals, and they set about thwarting one another as an act of love, when in reality it is an act of self-love and an act of hatred to others. Do you see how careful individuals must be in their thoughts and their feelings, how they must pay direct tribute to the great cosmic law, the law of their life, by giving more than they take to life? For when they take from life more than they give, they soon find themselves bankrupt and bereft of the ongoing attitude that life would otherwise give to them. And a certain somber condition comes into their consciousness, whereby there is a queasy feeling of unhappiness within them, because they know that they have not done right. For sin lieth at the door. And this is the voice of conscience that long ago spake unto Abel and unto Cain. But Abel hearkened, and Cain would not. And Cain slew his brother Abel. And therefore to this day, the criticism and condemnation of others functions in man even to the level of committing an act of murder. Let all understand that freedom from these unwanted conditions should be the desire of every man. For the world today, in the mold and cast of its present adventures in freedom, is creating darkness beyond its fondest imagination. And therefore, one of these days, the great toll will be exacted, and judgment will come. Until this moment, I trust that the Chelas of the light will see that divine illumination and understanding will create in them those cosmic senses whereby the overcoming victory of Christ's accomplishment can be the very action of their daily life that will give them the freedom they seek. For all freedom is God freedom. Let men understand this. There is no real freedom in self-will and the will of self-action. This is not freedom. It is darkness, and will one day return to man those evil conditions he has sent out to others. But by forgiveness and by love and by understanding, the pathway is clearly mapped and the strategy is determined. Individuals are able easily to fit into the slot then of cosmic reason. Flying swiftly as an arrow through the air, humanity are able to utter a cosmic prayer of reality and escape utterly from karma. For negative karma will not be their lot, but the creation of those positive actions that men have delineated as service. This the Master brought forth clearly to his disciples, as he said, "He that will be great among you let him become the servant of all. Only by this attitude of utter servingness and obedience are men able to free themselves at last from the net which they have otherwise long ago woven, which has become tighter around about them to hold them back at every moment that they would escape. Yet the great cosmic law is a law of mercy and love. And the great cosmic law is a law of strength. And the great cosmic law is a law of freedom. Freedom, then, so that men do not perish upon the earth, is the lot of all those who will enter into the great cosmic adventure with thanksgiving and triumph in their consciousness. They should realize and understand that the power to overcome is victorious in the Christ. And if in the Christ, then what shall they garner but more of his raiment, more of his garments, more of his desire of oneness with God? Why will individuals then seek for oneness with the world and with outer conditions, when the true way to unity is in the heart? And there in the heart man can fashion those immortally lovely garments that are spun from the fragrance of the sun. They can, by freshness and vitality, by life and light, wear these garments. And I tell you, something wonderful will happen to them when they do, for they will find that garments of light are comfortable to be worn. They emanate. And what do they emanate into the being of man? Why, they emanate the spirit of overcoming victory. And what else do they emanate? They emanate purity, and they emanate love, and they emanate, above all, the crowning Christ understanding of triumph, whereby man realizes that his lot is destined to be, because he wills it so, triumphant entry into the new Jerusalem of spiritual consciousness and the overcoming of all darkness. So let light live upon the earth. Rising higher, let it be ascended master love. And let that love be also tranquil within your heart. But at the moment of your desire speaking forth, let that triumphant love rise up as the smoke of a great furnace, indicating a cosmic activity within, the heating of the heart's love white hot, victorious and overcoming, crowning man with the wisdom of his doing, that he may understand all things and that which he doeth. For today many men know not what they do. Let joy and peace and love abound, and let a steadfastness to the great white brotherhood be the lot of all who are upon this path. Let them remain undeterred upon the pathway, and let no outer condition dissuade them or move them, as they themselves move through the waves of opposition, until at last the island of cosmic delight they seek appears before their gaze. And then, at last, they find themselves picking those fair flowers that are immortal of inner understanding of the great law as an object of their affection, for these flowers will enable them not only to gaze upon themselves as an object of beauty, but will sort out their confusions by divine directions until they are able to order divine perfections laid one after another in a row in the similitude of God. And then order and perfection permeating the body and being of man, corporeal and incorporeal, will indicate at last that the overcoming victory for which he seeks is within every man, and that he is able to arise triumphant in full faith that he shall receive that in which he invests. If he does not invest in light and love and cosmic triumph, how can he expect it to willy-nilly be born in him? But if he reckons with it and invokes it and calls it forth in himself and others, he will find a world around him, either here or there in the universe of cosmic splendor, that is a world belonging to God, because the natives of that world hold out hands of light to God and say, O Lord, how beautiful are thy feet upon the mountain. How beautiful are thy feet of attainment. How beautiful are thy feet of overcoming. And how thou hast guided us here in this vale of human struggle, until now at last we are one and all come to a place where thy attainment and thy beauty are manifest. Guide us still further through the trackless air, until at last we see thee seated upon a cloud, a white cloud of witness, that is transcendent and triumphant, as the universal Christ of the ages is born afresh in every heart, with the passion as of a great smoke. The fiery furnace is heated up, and with the power of a great smoke the cloud of witnesses draw nigh unto the earth, and to every one who will open their heart, not for this moment, but forever, to the sweet incense of cosmic grace and cosmic overcoming. Peace be upon you. Out of the openness of the heart is born the great sense of spiritual communion, representative of the quality of heavenly mercy, given to every man, to every woman, is the divine concept, universally lovely, of infinite mercy. But men do not understand that in the universe the quality of mercy must be a cooperative block. It must continue its manifestation together with other qualities of God. And therefore, the balancing of all is the great cosmic justice of the law. The quality of mercy is forever precious to the heart of God, for it is truly representative of his actions toward many of the affairs of mankind. Individuals from time to time are content with their lot as it appears in their world, and then again they are most discontent. to all of these, to those who are content with their lot, when in reality they should be filled with discontent, we send the mercy of potential change. So do we act then, that all men, regardless of their state of consciousness, may find the domain of mercy a reality from the very heart of God, either the swift winds of change or the stability of cosmic rectitude. For what is right must be established, and all that is wrong must fall. Do you understand the mercy of the great law? How that evil must of necessity change in order to achieve its own manifestation of freedom from evil. For evil itself is not reality, but instead it is actually good masquerading as evil, and therefore change must come to this manifestation. For there is inherent good within evil, for all actions of men whatsoever are ordained action, ordained either by their God presence or by their own presence in a state of whimsy or other states of foolish action. Individuals trifle with the kingdom of God and with their life as though it were in no way organizational, as though there were no plan whatsoever that would ultimately direct their overcoming of unwanted or unhappy conditions. Let all understand that there is a need for stability in the mind, a stability anchored in the mercy of God. For without the quality of mercy, we doubt if men would be able to produce change. Change is produced because God first perceives the dilemma of humanity. And even when they have embarked upon a course that will ultimately lead to their destruction, the great eternal strands of cosmic grace are released into their world, cords of universal love that bind the hearts of men unto God and to His truth, to the universal coordinates that ultimately will show forth the renewal of strength even when weakness appears. For strength, in a way, is born out of weakness. For man begins to understand that he ought to perform change. And so he does. And the very wish to produce it creates a strengthening in his resolve. And by a strengthening of his resolve, he moves toward the pole of overcoming that weakness by the victory of greater strength. And from measure to measure, at last, man begins to understand that the way is actually open to him to find the mercy of the law. Yet the mercy of the law has been with him always, from the earliest beginning until the present moment. But he has not seen mercy. He has not understood mercy and its qualities of balancing almost as a teeter-totter together with the justice of the law. Men sometimes chafe at the bit because justice is brought into their world. Yet without justice, how could mercy endure? For men must perceive that justice is instructive and enables the soul of man to find the means by which it can overcome the darkness in the world. Justice, then, is a requirement, just as much as mercy is. And when men who seek a mercy fail to recognize the great power of the cap of cosmic justice, they are overlooking an important aspect of universal mercy. The world today is in a very negative state, for the very compartmentalization of humanity into compartments of separation creates this dilemma for the world. We would open the windows of heaven. We would open the great cosmic circle of universal fire in the hearts of men, that they would be able to feel that openness which is so beautifully displayed in the chalice as a showcase of cosmic mercy. Men feel mercy in their heart. They extend mercy unto others. They extend mercy unto themselves. And the strengthening of its bonds will always strengthen the bonds of justice. And therefore, out of this great cosmic balance comes about a greater understanding of God and of His love. For even justice is not devoid of mercy, and the mercy of the law must be understood if man is to enter into the heart of God, to realize that mercy is one of the qualities and actions of the deity, that in each man's life there comes a time when the mercy of the law brings to him an opportunity. And oh, how subtle are these opportunities, how delicately balanced is the doorway. If men would only understand this, they would not neglect so many of the great opportunities that heaven provides from time to time. Unfortunately, they tend to gaze outwardly to that which the five senses can witness to, but ignore the senses of the soul within. For when the soul within is disquieted by outer conditions, in almost every case, we find various states of consciousness, unhappiness, despair, discontent, and human worry entering in to the human psyche and causing a disturbance there. Let each one understand that the absence of fear from the being of man is the desire of God, and it is the desire of mercy. But sometimes those who have sown the seeds of fear and of doubt are but reaping the harvest of their own sowing. The mercy of the law from time to time enables them to shift their emphasis into the light. And when they shift their emphasis into the light, there is an opportunity for them to see a hopeful way of escape. At that moment, the justice of the law has brought to them the mercy of God, and an opportunity for them once again to be free from their own human creation. Beloved ones, the human creation of man is itself a desperate manifestation of unfortunate education in the world. For all education is not of the educational system. A great deal of it is manifest in the various departments of life. There men and women come face to face with various aspects of human problems. And the way they react to those problems, whether they show mercy and justice unto others, will determine the way the law will bring to them a way of escape out of their own human dilemma. Rest assured that there is in reality one vast and holy way of escape, and that is through casting yourself, body, mind, and soul upon the mercy of God, and then trusting in Him let go of all outer conditions. You will find then that opportunities will still come to you, and these must not be neglected. So many feel that once they have cast themselves upon the very bosom of God, upon the heart of the earth, and are willing to do God's will and to accept his mercy, that then, almost with the speed of lightning, the immediacy of overcoming will be there. Let them understand delicately and fragrantly that this opportunity that the mercy of God brings must still be accepted, and man must look for it. For freedom stems from a cosmic world of action, not from the simple acceptance of an idea that is never acted upon. When men understand this, they will perceive how the human psyche, under the direction of its own innate, God-given intelligence, can grow in grace until at last it is free. This is the justice of the law of both mercy and the law of justice. Do you see how through the overcoming of outer conditions, the freedom God intended you to have can be yours, the garments he intended you to wear can be worn, and at last, free from fear and outer distress, having balanced your own karma, the very fruit from the seeds that you have sown, you will be at last able to assist others in the domain of understanding. And then the love of God will be given to men as the great drops of cosmic mercy that will flood the world. Currently, man is undergoing a great metamorphosis. The world is experiencing and will experience this year many dangerous manifestations of great peril. But the mercy of God will stand holding hands with justice and hoping that men will at last awaken to the fact that this world of outer manifestation, of outer sense, is also a world of spirit and of cosmic intent, that a greater mind has conceived of justice and freedom, and that all is balanced on the great fulcrum of liberty as an act of overcoming, of accepting freedom from fear, of accepting the doings that God has ordained. And God is a spirit, and that spirit is universal, and that spirit is all-pervading. Through the Spirit of God, the mercy of God is fragrantly dispensed, and all may see that life has a fulcrum of meaning in action here. Let it be done, and let cosmic love abound. Thus shall mercy herself be glorified as an aspect of the great temple of heaven here in Peking, from where I am speaking. Let all understand that all people upon the earth should come to the fountain of love and mercy, an adoration of the eternal covenant, and safety in the arms of God as mercy, as truth, as justice, as love. All these qualities are balanced in his heart. Are they balanced in yours? your sins be as scarlet, I shall make them as white as snow. Let men ponder upon the great desire of the human soul to shed at last every unwholesome drop out of the goblet of life, and see the chalice turned upward, waiting to receive the love drops of God's holy grace, those gracious moments of realization of unity that shall clearly reveal to each one the face of God. And each one shall thus understand that he is a drop of the infinite ocean, possessing the capacity to be the entire sea. When man understands this, his need to shed through the ritual of forgiveness all of the guilt feelings that trouble his world, until at last the beauty and radiance of the soul of God can be a fragrance to be smelled, or a feeling to be garnered from the business of total living. Then he can begin to enjoy at last the fruits of a life offered in a consecrated manner to his God. How many mysteries are in the world! Yet the greatest of these is love. For love is the divine nature. It speaks in the darkest recesses of the cave of each man's being. It comes forth as a voice of reason into the light, and the light suddenly glows with a luminescence behind the veil of the appearance realm, until at last man clearly sees that the thoughts of God are in reality many of those thoughts which he has had within his own heart in secret. And that which is done in secret shall be declared openly and shouted from the housetop. How I loved him! How my love was more than an ordinary love. I knew it not then, for I identified that love with his physical form and his sense of miraculousness. When I saw him heal the withered hand, when I saw him call forth Lazarus from the grave, and when I saw him walk upon the water, and when I heard how he spake unto Mary, and she said unto him, Rabboni, then my love mounted even more day by day. And if I thought I loved him when I first knew him, the image I had of him and of my love for him when last I knew him could not even be compared. So great had it become. And now this is today, and my love through the years has swept to unlimited heights and still is rising. But that love was also for the Christ within him, for the fragrance within him. And so I come to the subject of forgiveness and vibrations and feelings that men have in their heart. Through the years, man has created so much a sense of separation not only from God, the eternal Spirit, but also from one another. And he has almost taken delight in his sense of separation and loneliness, when in reality the great goblet of life was intended to symbolize a universal chalice, even as the individual consciousness of each man symbolizes a chalice filled with his garnerings through the years of reality. The tender experiences of thought and feeling in their high priorities go first into the chalice and then are often literally buried into the subconscious desires and feelings of the mind and heart. But the experiences remain, and so many are troubled and their hearts are afraid, for they recall those unfortunate experiences which taught them to hate instead of to love. And to love is the nature of God, and to love is the nature of his vibration. And his Spirit is also of this vibration, creating this feeling, sending it out into the universe, newness of life, and the strength of the draught from the cup he once held in his hand, saying, "Ye shall drink of it." And as the memory of that holy night lingers still in my consciousness, I come to you with the doctrine of purity and love. And I say, how unfortunate are they whose vibratory pattern is wedded to the harsh clanging of the world's thought, that is sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal speaks of human progress, while denying divine attainment. And divine attainment includes the ritual of the forgiveness of sins until each soul at last gives their all to God, even their sins, and they become cleansed in consciousness and mindful of purity and mindful of the whiteness of the new fallen snow. For though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though the scarlet thread may indicate the abode of the harlot upon the wall, the fresh snows of purity shall blot out forever the stain upon that spot, and at last all shall be holy and pure and delightful in the bonds of divine love. Oh, the sowing! The sowing is so magnificent. The beautiful seed, splendid in all of its intended manifestation. The seed that is opportunity. The seed that speaks of sun and wind and rain, and of the conspiration and configuration of all nature. The seed that will blend with the heart of the earth. It will press itself to the very bosom of nature, and then, putting down the tender roots, come again each season according to its seasons, to manifest the grain of good fruit to man, the bread of life. And so I think also of the abundant harvest. And I envision now this thought so that each one may take it into their heart as their personal harvest of their own good deeds and thought and action. God-likeness, God-kindness, God creation, God awareness, God strength, the fruit of the joy that in the very rising stalk welcomes the incoming light of the sun, making it green and fresh with all the beauty and bounties of nature, inherently lovely. Christ in man, Christ in nature, Christ everywhere apparent. His face, his love, his harvest, his sowing, his reaping, his joy. And so as I come to you today, I, John, say unto you, the brethren of God, remember the night, the sacred night of his Holy Communion, as that which preceded his great initiation. And understand also how you need so much communion with love, so much new understanding about love, so much realization of the power of forgiveness and the rising tide of his strength, as you learn to pour the sunlight of his forgiveness into the parched earth buried deep in your heart, and watch how the very sands and little tiny graininess thereof becomes at last a splendid seedbed of pure reality. How the little crystals in all of their shapes, geometrically sometimes seeming to oppose one another, but in reality arrayed in a splendid random organization that does not always appear in the randomness of nature, suddenly speaks to the hearts of each one and reveals at last the purposes and meaning of life, the control of vibratory essences. From whence cometh vibration? Do they not come either from the depths of a pure soul, such as Mary, the mother of Jesus, or many other holy women associated with him? And, I might add, holy men of God? Or do they come also from those who have hearkened unto the spirits that peep and mutter, and those spirits of delusion that come on every wind, saying to man, enjoy thyself, for it is later than you think? Yes, it is. It is later than many think. But life is still in the hands of God, and his love is still the realm of opportunity, is still the fragrance of new hope, and the understanding of how beautiful holy vibrations are, comfortable in all of their essence. They bring to man the realization of his eternal love, his eternal value for the Christ consciousness, for the consciousness which uses his mind and speaks to his heart. And so as I come to you today, may I momentarily, if it might even become uncomfortable to your flesh, raise the vibratory level in the room, so that you may come to know at least what we speak of when we speak of higher vibrations, higher frequencies, higher radiational patterns, the mind of God and the mind of Christ, the mind of light and the mind of that city of God. Angels of divine love, sweep into the atmosphere of this room and charge each one's heart with the feeling of God goodness that will exalt in them the realization of true being. I am within the chalice, and I am the resurrection and the life. I am the renewal of hope to every heart, speaking to him not of the moment alone as a fragment of eternity, but as the allness of God that is captured within that moment. The outreach of man, then, that begins as a shoot of tender aspiration, can become the vibrational pattern that thunders as from Horeb's height and speaks of divine love, even before the night of supreme sacrifice or the moment in the Garden of Gethsemane when the soul is sorely tried and sweats, as it were, great drops of blood, because the human effort is not sufficient to evoke the divine response. And so the divine response comes at last. And as it comes, it makes man aware of the need to exert his every effort and thought in those dimensions of cosmic reality that will clothe him with a garment of such splendor as to refute all of the garments of thought and feeling that he has worn in his callous and careless moments when he has not understood the meaning of divine love, but has used the world as a trampoline or a ground upon which he could stomp without understanding the meaning of that essence of cosmic purity which esteems each drop of life as coming from the goblet fresh and serene in that purity of the cosmic essence that is a fragment of the universal Christ. And so as I speak today, it is to intensify the magnificent outpouring of the chalices of your hearts and of your beings toward the universal one, that you may become the outposts of his outpouring upon the earth, and the inundation of divine love from the divine man-child may sweep away as a cosmic flood all of the flutterings and outreaches of earthly madness and the vile vibrations that men have experienced in their search, born from curiosity and ignorance, that has never allowed them to understand the way I am made plain, the way I am of universal love. Love for that Christ Spirit in yourself, and love for that Christ Spirit in every son of heaven. I say, let love intensify upon the earth planet, and may the great, glorious, cosmic thought form released by Lord Gautama become the means of each one's focalization of intense love upon the chalice of the world, so that whereas the world goes through the awesome crucifixions of war and violence constantly day by day, as the beating of the doors of darkness upon the actual heart of the world, it may become reliant instead of on that, on the eternal principle of universal love as expressed for that universal Christ reality by which we will surround the world in the glorious causal body of the universal presence that shall sweep the denizens of darkness literally off their feet and in effect into the judgment seat of cosmic grace, where they shall either choose once and for all time the glory of the eternal light, or the darkness, the utter darkness of outer night and despair, a treachery of betrayal, a manifestation of human thoughtlessness. Let them instead rise to the passion of cosmic love for God, for nature, for one another, and for the new age they shall create together. So the living masters can step through the veil into manifestation, into their hearts and minds first, and then literally through them into the world of form as recipients of the cosmic Christ in the chalice of their hearts, until there is born to the world the meaning of the sacred Eucharist, and the divine idea becomes at last the living word, garnered in our retreat and esteemed in the retreat of every man whose heart is understood to be the heart of God in cosmic form, even in the little microcosmic realm, growing and expanding until at last the light is everywhere and the darkness is no more. Then shall men see God, then shall men see Christ, then shall men be God and be Christ in manifestation. Christ and Krishna, the music of the spheres, the divine harmony encompassing hearts with the roses of God instead of the thorns that men have created around the roses and by which they have pierced their doings. Instead, let us now bring forth those drops of life that shall esteem the cosmic opportunity in all of its radiant splendor as a manifestation of eternal strength shining forever until man shall practically harness it as the wind of his sails that shall carry him to the farthest shore of becoming all that God intends, all that man hopes for, all that God is, a literal bower of loveliness, a literal bower of love, redeeming at last the sins of the world and making white as snow all that man is misqualifying, until at last the splendor of God's light has kept in the heart of the earth that light, and will at last now release it into the world as the panacea of all man's needs fulfilled at last. I was hungered, and ye gave me to eat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me to drink. I was sick and in prison, and ye visited me. By this hand of love, by this hand of love, by this thought of love, shall we visit the world anew with the invisible, unseen guest, the cosmic Christ, made visible in your actions, even as in every outpost of the brotherhood eternal. In his name I say, peace be upon you. Out of the veil of cosmic innocence I speak as the advocate of cosmic innocence in the heart of all of every age. As I come to you today, it should serve to remind you then that within you at any age is the masterful presentation of the banner of freedom, if you will open your hearts and the windows of your consciousness to receive it. So many people today, as in days of old, have matured, and in their maturity they have recognized that at last they have achieved some measure of the world's knowledge that they deem great. And by this standard of knowledge, they have supposed to judge the great realm of cosmic invisibility by which all things were made. Invisible in the sense that man, as the outer man, does not comprehend the things of the Spirit. He is not cognizant of the masterful sense of God in the creative act with which he has endowed all the cosmos. When we come to you today, then, it is to create essentially a knowledge of this duality, that knowledge may, in due course of time, become a single-faced knowledge. I want you all to understand how the world today seems confused by the duality of manifestation, hence their own state of ignorance. We who would bring, as God would, all knowledge and all grace into the world of form, want all to understand that out of the sense of duality ultimately is born the realization that as God has created the first cause and the first patterns of that cause, which has extended itself into the myriad manifestations of natural life, so also natural life must, in its attempt to escape from the domain of darkness, understand that it must also repudiate all that is the human creation and reach out until it can, by a state of congruency, manifest the reality that will ultimately make man to become one with God. Long ago, Jesus said that the Father is in me, and I am one with him. Let all understand that humanity today, as always, can reaffirm their state of oneness with their Creator, and thus put an end to that manifestation of duality which has only served their Creator, and thus put an end to that manifestation of duality which has only served to confuse them. Humanity finds it rather simple to think in terms of oneness, but they do not understand how this miraculous sense is finally conveyed to man. How can an individual retain his individuality, they say, and still become one with God, seeing that individuality holds many facets that another individuality does not hold? May I say to all, then, that the reality of God and the strength of God is communicated by this oneness. Humanity need not fear that they will lose their individuality by that cosmic merger of spiritual oneness which we seek to bring about. Rather, instead, they will intensify in the cosmos those benign aspects which they have now brought by the grace of Almighty God to some state of relative perfection. Let all understand, then, that this is the plan of infinity functioning in the finite world. This is the eternal plan functioning in the world of form. When the world of form, then, begins to understand that there exists in that magnificent cosmos, which they have come to regard as far from themselves, their only symbol of reality, then they will perceive that all else is in a state of flux, and either turning into that position whereby it loses its reality and identity, and then is ultimately merged with a new form of reality, or it is able to make that reality eternal because it becomes identifiable with the infinite. Let men understand this, then. Let them understand that we choose to admire that state of holy innocence by which the soul is ultimately cleansed and stands childlike before God, believing that all things are possible unto me. So long as individuals think that they are, in a relative sense, earthly, finite, and passing from the scene, how can they be expected to achieve anything whatsoever? But once they begin to realize that they are a part of a master plan of cosmic identity, given unto them out of the strength of the mind of God, they begin to understand their need to seal themselves in this mind of God and to believe that this mind of God lives in themselves. When they do, there is then given release into their physical world as well as their mind and whole being, a sense of the eternal flame. And that eternal flame blazing upon the altar of their heart, upon the altar of their being, becomes such a blazing reality as to create an intensification of all of their worthy motives, and these motives become directed Godward. Thus does man rise from a relative state of becoming to a state of truly being that which he is always becoming. So long as man is satisfied to be becoming, he seems to be able to remain wedded half to the world and half to the spiritual kingdom. But once he understands that he already is that manifestation of cosmic perfection, moving right where he is in the world of form, then so often do we find even the physical odor of roses is to be found right near that individual's physical form, simply because there is an activity of God that cleanses space, and upon this spatial altar a new flame is born, and we understand that this light of the Christ pushes back the darkness and is revealed as the day star from on high that has visited man, initiating him into that spirit of newness of life, whereby all things become new and the former things are passed away. Well, beloved ones, what is then happening? Simply this, that you are joying in God, and in this joying there must be motion. And this motion is in reality a voyage of discovery, whereby man is able at last to journey in the universe to the farthest parts of creation and to know that even there God is. And because God is there, man is also there. Today, the astronauts of the United States are, in effect, manifesting upon the screen of life a new aspiration, the aspiration for a greater moonwalk. Let me say to you that the cosmic astronauts of the Spirit ought to understand then that they can rise in consciousness for a greater sunwalk, whereby there can occur in their consciousness a renovation, an aeration, a cleansing of the Spirit, as the sacred fire descending upon the altar of their hearts brings at last to man the awareness that he is not earthbound, that he is not time-bound, that he is infinity radiating the light wherever he moves, because the light itself cannot perish, and that light is within him. When he begins to understand this, then the great compulsion of his life becomes the identification with that inner pattern. And thus there radiates into space those hallowed monadic expressions which are the fullness of God personified, individualized, as the individual at last, yielding himself to the eternal purpose of God, finds himself no longer a part of mere finite designs, but of infinity expressing in the finite realm, and saying unto it by that whispering or thundering voice of cosmic reason, "Come hither into the light and be a part of the mighty I Am presence of the universe." Do you understand then how each ascended being, each cosmic being, each archangel, each angel, each manifestation of perfection from higher spheres will ultimately manifest that cosmic strength which is the fullness of God? They do not find it difficult at all, none of them, to accept the fullness of God. Why is it so difficult then for humanity to accept it? Is it simply because they are a part of the footstool kingdom, unadorned perhaps by all cosmic virtue, yet always seeming to seek in the world of form those outer adornments which are the edification of human consciousness rather than the consciousness of the divine? Let me say unto all of you then, that once you understand it correctly, you will perceive that the jewels of God are literally scattered here in the domain of the physical form world. But humanity, by their own misqualification and by the densification of their consciousness, have from time to time created an overlay, a patine of darkness rather than a patine of pure cosmic gold, which ought to enfold the world by the holy wisdom, which is the measure of a man, which is the measure of a manifestation of God. Do you see what I am speaking about? Do you understand, precious arts of light, how darkness must go? And there ought to be the enthronement in consciousness of those cosmic ideals which are the cosmic profession of actually manifesting here in the world of the form all of the consciousness that God is. Now, why do I say the world of the form? It is because I want man to understand that there is a formless realm from which the world of form was born. And man is both a creation of the formless world of spirit and the creation by human consciousness of the world of form through those hereditary factors which also have helped to give him physical birth. Let him understand then that his real cosmic birthright is the gift of God, is the gift of the Spirit, and is the fullness of that overcoming power which is the God direction of his life. When he understands this, he will find no reason why he should separate himself from God. For the breaking down of the middle wall of partition and separation between him and God will be simply a matter of time or eternity. For what is time but the nectar of eternity manifesting in the world of form? When man understands that, he will see that by his qualification he can direct the Spirit into the world of form, so that the world of form can be an ascension elevator of consciousness to raise all back to the fullness of the God intent that in the beginning visualized a great paradise of God, which became a physical habitat for Adam and Eve as the progenitors of the race of man. Let us then make clear that all of cosmos is directed by God. But there are now presently, through the mercy of God, existing in the cosmos those beings who do not understand these high and untrammeled concepts. They seem to feel that out of individuality and out of a loss of innocence has come into manifestation some greater knowledge that clearly proclaims, "Ye shall be wise as gods." Let them understand that such is not the case, for the eternal holy wisdom is still proclaiming itself the wisdom of the ancients that remains and forever will remain, the age of cosmic innocence in the human spirit, proclaiming to man not the loss of anything, but the gain of everything out of that great fashion of the Spirit, whereby man becomes one with God. Do you see then how the very force of your lives is moving either forward or backwards? How you cannot stand still as a static condition. You must move forward into your cosmic potential, or find yourselves magnetically repelled backward from God by those magnetic attractions of the outer world of form that still exist in the world as the flowers of outer manifestation, qualified by those tinny magnetic concepts of the human, which never do bring man their God freedom and never will or never can. When you understand all of this more clearly, you will see through a glass not as darkly, but as face to face, and you will see that the great cosmic advent of spiritual victory is the understanding of the power of cosmic invincibility, the invincibility of the Spirit, the invincibility of the Spirit that is within you, to rise out of your own socket of density into that marvelous conception of the grace of God within you as the living overcomer of all things and the great arbiter of all man's destiny, until the world at last is free and the banner of freedom and innocence are proclaimed to the world as the God-victorious consciousness by which man can and does overcome the flesh, the world, and those conceptions of evil whereby he has been held in a form of bondage. Now we say, loose him and let him go. Loose him and let him go. Loose him and let him go. Let the old grave claws fall now to the ground. Let all of human rottenness and all those conditions that are darkness be transmuted and be no more. And let the pure light of the Christ as the holy dove of the Spirit, or as the annunciation of the great archangel Gabriel, signify for all time immemorial, the Lord is in his heaven, and his light proclaimed to the earth is the light of avant-garde movement toward the light, and will emancipate man, even as the will to be free is intensified, and the application is made to heaven for freedom from all densified conditions. And thus the answer comes, and thus the answer is born, and thus the answer, as the living Christ lives in man, to vest him with those immortal garments whereby he rises into the sun of his own being as the victor and conqueror of all that is darkness, and the proclaimer of the victory of the infinite consciousness of the ascended Jesus Christ to the world, that darkness may vanish in the light of a new cosmic reason, and a new burst of cosmic freedom to the earth become the birthright of every man-child, until all understand at last that they are destined to be free, are destined to be real, are destined to be no more a part of that image which is darkness, but ever a part of that cosmic image retained by God forever as the consciousness of the light of the ascended power, to be no more a part of man's city. For there shall be no night there, but only the light. For there shall be no darkness there, but only the light. For the light of the presence that is within you can, if you will understand it, rend the veil of your substance, until at last you see face to face reality and are that which you behold. I thank you. Out of the depths of the supreme strength flows into the consciousness of man the realization that all things are prepared for him by God, that the universe is a haven of beauty, a haven of loveliness, a haven of strength, that man cannot flee from it, that all that is everywhere apparent when one's eyes are opened. I remember long ago when my own eyes were opened and I saw for the first time clearly into the tremulous ethers that were everywhere a display case for the grace of God, radiant with light, sparkling as jewels in their splendor. The understanding of heaven flowed. It flowed into my consciousness as the tides of a great sea, until at last I came to realize that in this realm of the eternal, every grace and every lovely thing that I had formerly thought was a manifestation of the world of nature was in reality, first of all, a manifestation of the eternal Spirit. And in this flow of great tide into the world of form was the love of God encasing all. Why then did hatred, darkness, and despair exist in the world? Solely because of the negative emotions of the world, of the negative emotions of individuals, of their lack of faith in the grace of God, everywhere readily apparent in the natural order, and the splendor of it all came into my consciousness as the tide of the sea on that precious moment, beloved ones, when the dawn of God's light began to show me the mysteries of God as reality, as strength, and as fortitude. Then, as the flame of new courage was formed within me, I saw clearly that hopelessness was the lot of many, that they were in despair because of many things. They were concerned about the length of their life. They were concerned about the quality of their previous life, of the life to come. They were wondering just how there would be dispensed to them the very lotion of heaven's abundance. And suddenly I saw it all as the possession of every man, and yet man did not realize it. He was so easily distracted and turned aside from the goals of his victory. But at that moment, defeat seemed far from me, because I was imbued with the consciousness of the flow of God's light, of His strength, of His natural planning in the natural order for the destiny of man. And as I was captivated by all of this, I could scarcely even breathe a thought of negativity or darkness. It seemed everything was light, and those who say that darkness is merely the canvas on which light is projected did not even seem relevant to my mind, for I began to realize that light had a quality of abundance within itself, that it did not need to be reflected upon darkness as a medium of contrast, for it had its own forte of brilliance and variety and variegation within itself. And at that moment I saw the sparkling splendor of all the jewels of heaven manifesting to me the consciousness of the abundant life. And as I saw it all, I began to understand why this great hunger for God within me had arisen. I perceived that it was natural, a calling back of old memories and old victories that were resident within the soul itself. And here was I, a fragment of the great God self, being given all of this grace to externalize in the miniature realm of my outer self, of my consciousness. And I said, "Oh, let the rings expand, let the rings expand, let the rings break out, break the iron bands that have confined me, give me my freedom to think and to be as God is. If the container will not hold Him, I must enlarge the container until at last I am able to hold all of God and to be swallowed up gladly for Him and for humanity. For all are one, and the victory of one is the victory of all, and the victory of all is the victory of one." And when men understand this and perceive the nature of it, then you see they are no longer concerned so much by the trivialities that often otherwise bring them much distress of consciousness and a hindrance of their very moving forward on the spiritual path into the victory of their ascension. But now the ascension seemed to me to be a blessing of reality. The ascension seemed near at hand. The dawn of victory seemed near at hand. for all was captivated in the idea of the expansion of cosmic grace. And I began anew. I began anew to take, first of all, courage in the gesture that God could do this for me, in me. That God in me was all victorious. That God in me was as strong as he was in the universe. That God in me was not limited. That God in me could expand as the God in all. That out of this flow was born the alchemy of cosmic change. That I must trample upon those qualities in myself that were non-virtuous. And I must change those qualities until they resembled the God self, and a spirit of discipline was born in me, and a spirit of determination was born in me, and a new idea came into my mind that I could win my victory, that I could make my ascension in the light. And from that hour, I tell you, it never stopped. For with the dawn of this understanding through the personal experience, each individual is able at last to meet all of the challenges of his existence and meet them well. We are able then today to confide in you as we are doing and to bring you the spirit of absolute certainty. Some of you may have wondered why I should have ever been given the appellation of Rex. Perhaps you understand it now as the crown. For the crown is his and the crown is every man's, and in this sense we could receive it and acknowledge it. And we acknowledge it in this sense today, for the crown is God. And I say to every young man, as one who was a young man and who is a young man eternally, that we do not need to stop and stand pat upon some worldly idea or concept of limitation. We can cast it down and scorn it, even as we admire the grace of God that is so readily given to us if we are ready to accept it. It is so much a matter of acceptance. I say to all of you, if you will accept it in your feeling world, if you will accept it in your mental world, if you will accept it in your heart of hearts, and in your physical consciousness, and even in your cell consciousness, if you will evoke for yourself this alchemy of change, I am sure we can change the world. The quality of time may be needed, but I assure you that we can hasten the day as you accept the faith of the great release to you today of the power of your own God presence. From that presence flows out a mighty tide of light, a tide of faith, a tide of strength. This is eternal, like a ribbon of light. It flows through the darkness and cuts it. It yields. The darkness yields the power of the light, and the ribbon of light becomes as your own great cord of light, connecting you to the heart of your God presence. Will you recognize then that you have an absolute responsibility to expand your life in the God direction? Do you understand that this is the only way you should go? To go in another direction is to actually forfeit your birthright momentarily. And one cannot always be certain of future opportunity. For opportunity comes momentarily and must be grasped. Those who grasp it gain talents. Those who reject it may in the maelstrom of human experience find themselves drowned and oppressed, unfortunately in some cases never to rise again. But the path upward is not easy, you say. I tell you the hardest part of the path upward is just before your victory. But if you will only understand that the flow of God's light into your world can give you your victory, then I think you will no longer allow yourself to entertain the very thoughts of defeat. By a positive attitude of mind and heart, you will resurrect in yourself those overcoming victories of the Spirit that in ages past existed and in this age exist alive and well in you. Will you accept it? Will you resurrect in yourself the new consciousness of absolute faith in your Creator and in the power of the ascended Masters to guide you to your God victory? Will you accept this power and the pressure from on high that is designed to give you every assistance at this moment of your need? If you will, I am sure that the onward path will loom before you, and your victory will be closer in view. As a bouquet from higher realms, I have given you my words and my love. And I give it to every young man and every young woman. And I give it to every older person. Let all men and women understand that it is their gift. They may, if they will, make it their own. Only the person, by their doubts and the refusal to accept it, can be the hindering force that opposes their destiny. Before you, the great looms of life stand. The fabric of the cloth, spun from pure light, is before you. Weave the great garment of solar light, that you may become children of the sun. Clothe yourself with this great garment of invisibility, and know that it will be the enfolding mantle of the cosmic flame, guarding you and guiding you to the realm of your eternal victory. I thank you.